Hello, everyone. My name is Lance, and today I'm going to be walking you through the Blackbody Spectrum Simulator on the Physics Education Technology website. Um, let's get started. So, over here, we have our black bodies, and a black body is just an idealized physical body that absorbs all incoming electromagnetic radiation, and electromagnetic radiation is just any energy traveling in waves, so light waves, radio waves, X rays. So a black body just absorbs all electromagnetic radiation, regardless of frequency or angle of incidence. Angle of incidence is just if you have your, uh, let's say you have your little copper plate or whatever substrate is going to be absorbing or reflecting the particle. This is your angle of travel for the particle, or this is your path of the particle. If you drew a perpendicular line, that angle between the path of the particle and that perpendicular line would be your angle of incidence. But basically, this is just saying that a black body is going to perfectly absorb all wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation and will not reflect or transmit light. But under the black body, we see that there's a temperature associated with that. And there's a reason. Once you heat a black body to a certain temperature, now this is dependent on the type of black body. At a certain temperature, the black body will begin to emit electromagnetic radiation. Um, some of this radiation ends up falling in our visible spectrum, which we'll get into in a second. Okay, so let's talk about our axes here. So wavelength. What is wavelength? Well, I just said that electromagnetic radiation is any energy traveling in waves. So let's imagine a wave here. You have an ocean wave, right? If you were to measure from peak to peak or crest to crest, that would be your wavelength. And a shorter wavelength have a higher frequency, and also meaning there's more waves. Like if you had a wall here, what would be the frequency of these waves smashing into that wall? So a shorter wavelength will mean higher frequency, but also your waves will look like this. Whereas a longer wavelength, lower frequency, and your waves will look like this. Okay? That's wavelengths. This is in micrometers or microns. Nanometers are more common, but this particular simulation uses microns. On your y-axis, you have spectral power density, and that is measured in megawatts per square meter per micron or per micrometer. And we know that megawatts is a measure of power. We've seen it on our appliances, our kitchen appliances. This is a measure of area, and this is a measure of wavelength. So what does this tell us? This tells us that spectral power density is actually the power of emittance, or the power of electromagnetic radiation emitted by the black body over an area at a certain wavelength. Pretty simple, right? So in order to get our graph values, we have to click graph value button. You'll see here, this is your spectral power density. This is your wavelength, and we'll play with the slider here in a second. Let's just throw our labels up, and we'll also, just for fun, we'll click on the intensity button, which shows us the integral, the area bounded by the graph and the x-axis of our spectrum. And basically what this is just the total amount of power radiated by the black body over all wavelengths. So it's just interesting to know. It's a really large number, as you can see, for the sun. Anyways, let's take a look at some different black bodies. So as you can see, our sun is emitting a lot of its radiation in our visible spectrum. So it's doing a really great job, and it is super efficient at lighting our world and providing energy to plants and making our world go round as we know it. However, there's some other black bodies down here that we could explore. But first, let's go up. Let's move the slider up. increasing temperature and see what happens. Let's zoom out real quick because this peak will start to jump pretty high as we go up. So what's happening? Let's take a look at what's happening to spectral power density and wavelength as our temperature increases. And as we know, through Wien's law, as an object gets hotter, it emits more radiation at shorter wavelengths. And this relates to Planck's law. The intensity of radiation emitted by the black body at a certain temperature is proportional to frequency, but we don't care about frequency because we're relating this to wavelength, so it's inversely proportional to wavelength. Those two laws kind of explain why we're getting a higher peak at a lower wavelength at a higher temperature. So as you can see here, we're somewhere between Sirius A, which is a huge star, and the sun, which is our beloved star. And let's go down now and take a look at what happens when you decrease temperature. Okay, well, the wavelength is going up, and our peak is quickly becoming smaller and smaller, meaning we're emitting, and look at this number here, getting smaller and smaller. We're emitting less light. Let's take a look at what an incandescent light bulb is doing, what the behavior is looking like. So as you can see, it's not doing a great job. Most of the intensity, most of the radiation that is being emitted by the filament, which likely in this case is probably tungsten or something, that radiation that is being emitted after the filament has been heated to 3000 Kelvin is mostly missing the visible spectrum, meaning human beings won't be able to see the light coming off of the light bulb. Like most of the light coming off of a light bulb, we'll only be able to see a small amount. And we perceive light bulbs or incandescent light bulbs to be yellowish red. So it's only, compared to its peak, you're getting almost a third of the spectral power density, which kind of explains why we've phased out incandescent light bulbs. They're just very inefficient. Whereas with some LEDs, you could actually set a particular wavelength, which is really cool, so that all of the light emitted from that light bar, that LED, is in the visible spectrum. You're getting the maximum amount of illumination. Anyways, let's see what Earth looks like on the spectrum, just out of curiosity. And you might expect Earth to be 0, the spectral power density for Earth to be 0. But it's telling us that at 300 degrees or 300 Kelvin, which is 27 degrees Celsius, where is this peak? You can't even see it. But it's a very high wavelength, 9,659 nanometers. That's the wavelength. You're not going to be able to see that. I don't think any living thing is going to be able to see that wavelength of light. But it is still emitting a very small amount of light. And if you look at the intensity, there is a small amount of radiation coming off of Earth at 27 degrees Celsius or 300 Kelvin. So that's pretty cool, right? So you could play around with a simulation, and you could, over here, you have your little star or Blackbody, whatever, and you could see and play around with really, understanding. The sun is very efficient at what it's doing. At most of its illumination, most of its radiation is in the visible spectrum, and which is really, really, really phenomenal. Which, kind of explains evolution, right? Our eyes have adapted to see this wavelength because that's the wavelength that our sun emits the most, in most abundance and highest abundance. So and as you can see, if you were a plant, you're not getting as much spectral power density. You're not getting as much of that electromagnetic radiation because you see plants, as we know, absorb the most red light and reflect the most green light. So yeah, if you're a plant, I suppose you should consider evolving to absorb green light and reflect red light instead of the inverse. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, that is the Blackbody Spectrum Physics Education Technology website. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching.